Hi all. The last video I did of my club game had the Vienna opening, and someone expressed an interest in a series perhaps on this opening. It is quite novel and could get a psychological edge if the opponent after e4, e5 is expecting just standard knight f3. The most beautiful Vienna game I saw in real life, and also a major upset, was in the Lloyds Masters of 1992. A player with white called Andrew Hon, a very talented young player who used to play for Barnet Knights Chess Club, and he was around 200 ECF for several years and still has a FIDE rating of around 2200, and he was playing a Grandmaster opponent, Van Der Sterren, in this Lloyds Masters. So he played knight c3, and his Grandmaster opponent played knight f6, and now he played this undermining move, f4. So white's aiming to gain a strategical edge by more central control. So Paul Van Der Sterren, he plays perhaps the sharpest critical continuation, d5. So black's trying to quickly liberate the position. After f takes e5, knight takes e4. White now plays the ultra sharp d3, so it's inviting queen h4 check, a very exciting tactical opening variation. So queen h4 check. Now white plays g3, offering in effect a rook sacrifice on h1, as we're about to see. Knight takes g3. So here, if white plays h takes g3, that's not very good. Queen takes h1 and the knight's in pre, and also d5 is protected here, so there's no knight takes d5. So say if king f2, Rybka gives knight c6 with advantage to black. Because the queen is wriggling out here, say d4 to try and keep the centre locked, queen h2, bishop g2, and now bishop f5, black's doing fine. There's no real problems here. The queen is slightly embarrassed with knight f3, but it just goes to h5. After knight takes d5, black can now castle queenside. So the tables are being turned here with the pressure now on d4. So anyway, so black's has an advantage there. So basically, if we go back, after check, g3, knight takes g3, best is knight f3, attacking the black queen. So it loses a tempo to go to h5. And now just taking on d5. So just casually giving up your rook on h1, because you've got this knight takes c7. So knight takes h1, knight takes c7 check. And black offers his rook on a8. So this is a very entertaining variation. Knight takes a8, bishop g4. But in the midst of all this tactical stuff, you'll notice, white does have this strategical edge potentially with the central control, the centre pawns. As long as they're not a liability, that's going to mean the pieces are stronger later if there's a better central grip. Bishop g2. The bishop also turns out to be very powerful on this diagonal. Knight c6. So Andrew reinforces his centre now with d4. After bishop takes f3, white ends up with a clear advantage. Maybe bishop takes f3 wasn't the best move. I believe king c8 is a more accurate move here. But still, after bishop e3, king b8, bishop takes h1, white ends up with a small edge because of the centre. Say queen e2, king takes a8, and castles, and you'll have a nice advantage here with the white pieces. But let's go back. In the game, Paul Van Der Sterren, this looks to be too forceful, bishop takes f3. It gives white a very elegant winning continuation. After the queens came off, knight takes d4, and here is a killer check. Bishop g5 check. And look at this. If f6, let's have a look at f6, then castles queenside, and that very nasty pin on d4 exists. If fg here, rook takes d4 check, followed by bishop takes h1, white's a piece up, and it's difficult, it seems, for black to get that knight so quickly. So say g6, rook b4, b6, bishop d5, cutting the king, bishop g7. But look how, you know, the bishop's now protecting that knight, that stranded knight. So rook a5, and this kind of continuation, white's clearly a piece up. Even though the knight's seemingly stranded, it's coming out now. So let's go back. So after this check, if let's see, the alternative of f6 is not that good because of castles, but bishop e7 now. Let's have a look at bishop e7. Now here castles is a big mistake because bishop takes g5 is check, but here rook d1 and white's again gaining the advantage. So like this, rook takes d4 and the knight can come out now with knight c7, so that's fine. So the knight's coming out back to d5 and then taking on h1, and here just rook a4 is good enough. So if black takes, there's this skewer on the 5th rank like this. So basically it seems Van Der Sterren, he's got a lost position after this bishop g5 almost, because in the game situation he tried king c8 and now white just casually and elegantly castled queenside. Now if knight takes f3, then rook d8 is mate, because the knight on a8 is protecting the c7 square. So this is very entertaining tactically. Black played now bishop c5, and now, although the knight on the rim is very dim here, especially it's on the far corner, it plays a useful tactical role now. After bishop takes h1, king b8, white plays b4, and all of a sudden, you know, black can't play bishop b6 because of knight takes b6. So the knight has a purpose after all to guard the b6 square. So after b4, it became clear white's going to be a piece up, or something horrible is going to happen to himself positionally. So knight e6, at least, you know, attacking the bishop. B takes c5, knight takes g5, and now rook on the 7th. And look at this mighty bishop on h1, coordinating with the rook beautifully on b7. After king takes a8, rook takes b7. Andrew's grandmaster opponent resigned. He'd had enough. And this wasn't the only grandmaster that Andrew beat that tournament, I believe. He had a phenomenal tournament, and it's a shame he didn't keep up his chess. I hope maybe he sees this video on YouTube and maybe comes back into the game. He's one of those players that, you know, had real potential to become an IM or GM. He was definitely very strong as a junior player, and the Vienna was very firmly in his surprise opening repertoire. It has a strategical basis as well as a surprise basis, and you know, it's this move f4 here against knight f6. It's not so hot against knight c6 because of the queen h4 variations that are a bit more annoying, but against knight f6 this seems to be a very nice system to play f4, and backed up statistically with, you know, good results statistically on chessgames.com. So this is one of the sharpest variations, just inviting this queen h4 check. So you gain a tempo on the black queen, you go and grab black's rook on a8, and you take the time for d4, and this bishop takes f3. It seems to be a big mistake. Rybka gives advantage all the way now for white. So it seems white's piece placement and potential to castle queenside gives white a fantastic position here, a winning position, especially because there's this nice little resource b4 just undermining that d4 knight. So this forces the things to go along this path, with the knight coming awkwardly just to recapture on g5, just allowing this rook on the 7th, and that was it. A fantastically elegant game from 1992 where a boy beats a grandmaster. So the Vienna, an interesting surprise weapon for use in your own games. I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave any comments on YouTube. Thanks very much.